sure I'm not the only person that thought Bo Burnham had, like, the worst case of quarantine hair. Right? He looks like a hobo. Ho-bo-bo! I mean, the real question is, if Bo Burnham became a mall Santa, would we be legally required to refer to him as ho-ho-ho-ho-bo-bo? Oh, my head hurts. I actually had to take 5 takes of that just so I could get the right number of hoes and the right number of bows. You can tell I'm bringing my A game today. A YouTuber that I really like, Daniel Thrasher, makes it no secret that he loves Bo Burnham. Hello, the man is literally a piano comedian. It has to come from somewhere, right? But when asked about his new special, Daniel had this to say.
I will say that Bo Burnham is a genius. I think when you're in a position where you inspire a lot of people, that's a big responsibility. Perhaps slightly less of a pessimistic, nihilistic approach could have benefited more people than the cynical exploration of self that he had. Tried to be more alleviating and less vitriolic.
Now, to be completely honest, I am taking that clip out of context. In fact, he added a little scene postscript to clarify that he loved the special and he thought it was going to win an Emmy. However, he didn't backpedal on his original point. And while I understand the place that he's coming from, I think he was wrong about that. Or at the very least, there's a lot of details that Daniel left out of there, which is understandable because it was just a question in a Q&A video as opposed to a full-length analysis or something like that. For those of you that don't know, Bo Burnham is a comedian that uses the piano as his main tool of humor. He writes songs about things like existential dread, or the internet, or dick pics, or white people. Yeah, he made it big back in like 2006 off of like 30 videos on the internet. He's now a comedian who's world famous and shit, and he recently released a special called Inside, which, I mean, stuck inside, yeah, you get the point. And I definitely do understand where Daniel was coming from, especially when it comes to the first parts of the special, because he's talking about, ha 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 ha, the world is so fucked up, we shouldn't be making jokes, but I'm going to make jokes anyway, because I'm fucked up too. And I don't think Daniel was wrong either. Bo Burnham has had a historically, incredibly pessimistic message. See, for instance, this poem titled Beautiful in his book called Egghead. You're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, and I know that. But I can't rediscover it every fucking day. I can't return to that epiphany every time my alarm clock goes off. It's unnatural. But what I can do, and do quite naturally, is become jaded and unimpressed by it. I can see your beauty as normal, as one of my life's many constants. I can climb atop its shoulders and travel about, rolling my eyes at sunsets and rainbows, dismissing all of the world as less than average. And I can complain to you about it, and you can deduce your beauty from that. Yeah. Or the song Welcome to YouTube, for instance. Plenty of pessimism in that. Why would there be no clue? It's not that a channel with less than 1,000 subscribers, which is literally incapable of being monetized, got demonetized multiple times.
Before YouTube, I was just a skinny white kid that thought he was funnier and cooler than he actually was. And now, well, not much has changed, but I've money.
Or a song titled Art is Dead, in which he says that he basically starved many fucking babies because he wanted his name in lights for a comedy special. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense until you listen to the song. Link in the description. Please do. It's amazing. He never addresses any kind of call to action. He just states the world as it is, says that it's awful, refuses to elaborate, and leaves. But Inside feels kind of different, and I think it's a lot more hopeful than a lot of people, including Daniel Thrasher, seem to think. One of the most popular songs from Inside is one that you've probably heard because it is everywhere now. Welcome to the internet.
Welcome to the internet. Come and take a seat. Would you like to see the news or any famous women's feet? Colored pencil drawings of all the different characters in Harry Potter fucking each other. Welcome to the internet. Could I interest you in everything all of the time? A little bit of everything all of the time. Apathy's a tragedy and boredom is a crime.
Which honestly is terrifying if you think about it, because it's basically like the theme song for a supervillain, except it's the grandiose version that plays when they win and the bad ending comes and the world explodes. Where boredom is a crime and nobody has any new ideas because definition Additionally, all of the collective knowledge of humanity is in one place for a fucking 2-year-old to access with an iPad and all the weirdness that comes along with it. Self-consciousness and even identity can be broken down by the internet. What's the difference between the avatar and the person? What's the point of being nice to people if they can't attribute it to the real person? Except, is your online identity a real thing, and is that why you should be nice to people on the internet? But that line everybody keeps quoting in the comments, can I interest you in anything all of the time? People think there are a lot of negatives in it, and I do understand that because anything all of the time can mean children dying and dick pics flying everywhere. But it can also mean dumb dyed-haired gamers raising millions of dollars for charity. Yes, I know those photos are like 5 years old. Switch! Dumb, non-dyed-haired gamers in their 30s raising millions of dollars for charity, or some kid in a small town who's like 16 or 17 years old building a comedy career off of 30 videos on a random website called YouTube. Anything and everything can mean amazing things, and I think he was slightly alluding to that in the B section of the song, that slow bit in which he talked about how we are all insatiable and unstoppable. That's a part of anything and everything all of the time, too. The very beginning of the show involves a lot of stuff about how it's wrong to be laughing right now because people are dying. Do you really think comedy is gonna fix a global fucking pandemic? Which immediately makes the audience beg the obvious question of, well then why did you make the fucking special Bo? Bo is one of those names that kind of sounds like it could be a panda name. Or was that Poe? I can't fucking remember. And it was Poe. Never mind then. Our obvious question gets answered in an obvious way and a not so obvious way in the end. The obvious way being Bo Burnham just looking into the camera going, I hope I could have lifted up your hearts in this dark time because we're all moving through this together, blah, blah, blah. We've heard it a million times before. I think everybody between Matt, Pat, and Jimmy Kimmel have said shit like that before. It's the only time that Matt, Pat, and Jimmy Kimmel have anything in common. But the fact that comedy makes people happy is actually kind of disconnected from the message that it also looked like the special was looking to tell, that inside is a trap, but it's also home because the minute you go outside, then everybody's looking at you and you're naked and you can't go back inside. Fuck my existence, I guess. John Green just released a new book called The Anthropocene Reviewed, in which he writes an 8-page review of Auld Lang Syne, which I believe to be one of the greatest literary works of John Green. Like, just ever. And he says that inside the trenches of World War I, soldiers who didn't know what the fuck they were doing and who knew they were certainly going to die would sing a different version of Auld Lang Syne because nobody knew the fucking lyrics, going, we're here because we're here, 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 because we're here. I think Bo Burnham's message is actually something kind of similar. When he was talking about the act of suicide, he was saying, just don't, okay? There is no inherent reason not to. You just don't commit suicide because you don't commit suicide, because you don't commit suicide, because we're here, because we're here, because we're here, because we're here. Nothing is inherent to that idea. I mean, nothing is inherent in the universe, but we're not gonna get into that. Just don't. And I really do believe that that ending area is where the optimistic message lies. I just think it's kind of been buried. It's worth noting that Bo Burnham hasn't performed live since 2018. That means that this man, this genius that can pull philosophical bullshit out of his ass on talk shows in 3 seconds, has had 3 years to think about these concepts without a larger audience to test it on, or to show it to, or to show beta versions of. Alone, in his room, thinking, for 3 years. When you're working on a project or an idea alone for 3 days, your brain already goes crazy. The only other example of things going haywire because the community is so self-contained that I can think of is maybe Five Nights at Freddy's. You don't realize that something is weird until you get a second person to look at the thing, and the more brain power you put into it alone, the weirder it gets. See, for instance, anybody that's developing FNAF, anybody that theorizes FNAF, hey, anybody that plays Five Nights at Freddy's. Seriously, it's murderous robots in a Chuck E. Cheese parody Night Guard edition, except there's also VR and souls, and William Afton is purple but also orange, and Junior's is Does nobody understand how openly ridiculous the idea of a haunted pizzeria is? I might make a whole video of me just trying to understand the FNAF lore. That's gonna take forever, wouldn't it? I think Bo Burnham intended for Inside to have an optimistic message, it's just really buried, even though in his mind, it's as clear as day and night. He's been thinking about it for so long that it's become too obvious that he keeps trying to hide it in more and more layers. I think Bo Burnham, above all, is trying his best not to be cliche, what with his piano and, well, you know. If there's something that guy would hate, it's saying the same thing that a bunch of other people have already said on this topic. We're fucked at the moment, but you can make a difference! I don't like the Daniel Thrasher in that initial clip. Let's see it again.
Perhaps slightly less of a pessimistic, nihilistic approach could have benefited more people than the cynical exploration of self that he had, tried to be more alleviating and less vitriolic.
He implied that Bo Burnham's message was just that we're fucked and that we can't do anything about it. The whole existence of the special means that he thinks that comedy is important, and not just in the ha ha ha, the whole world is fucked up, but I'm making jokes because I'm fucked up too, ha ha ha. But there's also a beauty in it. We can look out into the world and we can see that it is completely messed up right now. But we can laugh about it. There is joy to be gleaned from suffering. There's an appeal of darker messaging, especially with things like Inside. They're seen as more realistic, they're edgy, they get people's attention a little bit more. Bo Burnham's main demographic is like, what, teenagers basically, right? So how do you get a teen to repeat your song 50 times over? Don't preach a message about how the world is gonna get better because of you. No, you make it look fucked. It worked for My Chemical Romance, it can work for him too. But think about it for a second. Every nihilistic, not just music, but every nihilistic piece of literature to have ever existed either has the message of we can fix it or we're fucked, and then just refuses to elaborate. Neither are something that Bo Burnham wanted to say, because both have been done so many times. I'm gonna read you something from his book of poetry, and trust me, it's going to be weird, but it's gonna make sense. I come from a land of really fucked thoughts, where babies are bound by umbilical knots, where dead horses pile on dandruff stuffed cots, where burn victim monkeys drink blood and I don't want to stay, but I know I can't leave it. I needed to tell you, but please don't reread it. I hope this sounds silly and you can't conceive it, because you're here the second you believe it. I told you there was meaning to it. Ignoring the fact that Bo Burnham is probably not okay, because no sane human being would ever write something like that. It's that last line that I think makes the most sense here. Because you're here the second you believe it. That doesn't just apply to the land of really fucked thoughts. That applies to the land of really mediocre thoughts. That applies to the land of slightly okay thoughts? He never listed any reasons not to kill yourself in the fucking special. He just told people not to, because if you believe that that is something that you inherently shouldn't do, then that is a thing that you inherently shouldn't do. There is so much of our minds and our worlds that can be bended just by believing certain things. So I guess the main message of the special was to believe in yourself? Again, when you put it in terms that dry, that's when it starts losing all of its charm. It falls into a cliche because everything can be boiled down to really simple concepts, but once you do, those terms have been repeated over and over again. So for Bo Burnham, it has to remain convoluted in order to avoid being cliche and to remain unique and to actually be creative. If he didn't believe that he could return to comedy after he left in 2018, then he never would. If he didn't believe that he could make a special all by himself during quarantine, then he never would. Belief is an important part of the way that we think. So in a way, you can believe yourself into a better world right now. That got really sappy at the end, but before I go, I just want to read you something from here. I didn't really have a clean way to fit this into the main video, but I thought it was just way too important to leave out, so I figured I'd just read it in the outro because fuck it, why not? This is my video. The poem's titled Listen, and it reads, "You're nothing special," except there's a comma after nothing, and special is capitalized. So even if you believe that you're nothing special, then that's okay, because special is also nothing. I just thought it was interesting, so I would point it out, but otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. I know this got really preachy towards the end, which is exactly what Bo Burnham didn't want to do with Insight, which is probably why it took him a year and it took me like 2 weeks to make this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I sincerely do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting what you thought of the video down below, but until next time, this is PDB Ash, signing off.